Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. So and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
Except you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Gotcha.
Let me put something else to you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible. So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Well, I made the argument there, so it depends.
So you don't believe in equal pay?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark ages?
That's because they're actually not listening. They're
I'm
just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and I'm
they think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms. Equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No, I didn't say that.
If I was a young woman watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls and give up trying at school because I'm not going to get the top job I want because there's someone sitting there saying it's not possible and it's not desirable, it's going to make you miserable.
Desirable. That's what I said. It's a bad social goal. I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that because I don't believe that for a second.
Rolling the clock forward, you and Elon tweeted recently about population collapse. What do you think is going to happen there?
Oh, well, I've thought for at least 10 years that the biggest problem in 50 years will be that there's just not enough people.
I remember hearing you say a few years ago that you thought we'd peak at about 9 billion.
Yeah, we probably won't hit 9. Yeah, and I knew the stats because...
Think about how crazy it is to think that we might be living on Earth right now at a time with the most number of humans that are ever going to exist at one time ever.
Yeah, that's highly probable. And you know, and the population,
that blows my mind.
The population collapse in developed countries is precipitous, right? It's like we fall off a cliff.
If fewer people are reproducing, next generation you have fewer people to reproduce as fewer people are reproducing, and it.
Yeah.
And
well, I worked on a UN committee, so I looked at all sorts of things like that. I was very curious, for example, about because people have been beating the overpopulation drum since, well, it really kicked in the 1960s, you know, because there were dire predictions. By the year 2000, the Club of Rome came out and said, well, there'll be riots and mass starvation and mass movement of migrants and all the things you hear about climate change because there's too many people on the planet. And that just didn't happen at all. That was just that. It wasn't just wrong, it was anti-true. It was absolutely wrong. What happened instead was that everyone got way richer and the bottom section of the population in terms of economic distribution got lifted out of poverty. As soon as you educate women, the size of family shrinks precipitously, like below replacement. And that's partly because women have other options. That's a huge part of it.
We're seeing this play out.
Oh yes. I mean, all the countries in the West are way below replacement. Korea's way below replacement. South Korea, Japan, way below replacement. Yeah.
I think the number one on the planet might be Chad, the country.
In terms of growth?
8 children on average.
Yeah, I think Nigeria will have more people in it than China by the end of the century. So, yeah. And Musk, you know, he's a far-looking man, and so he's looking around the apocalyptic corner, let's say. We're running out of people. And what that means, of course, is that you run out of young people, right? You don't run out of old people first, because everyone who is here now is going to be 30 years older in 30 years, and it'll be young people we don't have enough of. And of course, young people are the ones who do the innovation and are going to do most of the heavy lifting, etc. And so there's going to be a terrible shortage of young people.
Well, you see this with some of the things that I posted, that ONS data, 50.1% of women childless by 30, and both men and women are replying to that tweet saying, well, good, there's too many people on the planet in any case.
I know.
I'm thinking, this NPC midwittery is so dangerous because it makes people believe that they actually have something grounded backing up their claims.
Yeah. Well, and this idea that the planet has too many people on it, there's no sentiment more implicitly genocidal than that statement. So what do you mean too many people? Exactly. And what do you mean the planet? And what do you propose to do about that exactly? Mass abortion, is that your answer? Or should we do something a little more dramatic? I saw a professor when I was at a TED, I think it was doesn't matter. There was a number of professors talking to a couple hundred students, and one of the professors who was an environmentalist activist type, and he got up on stage and shook his finger to the whole young crowd saying that him and his wife had only decided to have one child, which was, in my opinion, one child too many for him.
So Jordan, you've done endless interviews. You've been publicising your book, and they've generated plenty of heated debate.
I actually sold out the Apollo. It had 5,000 seats.
All right, stop boasting. Do you think a trans woman is a woman?
No.
Why not?
Because I think that women are capable, generally speaking, of having babies, and they have female genitalia, and they have an XX chromosome, and I think the biological markers are relevant. It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think that people should be treated with respect and dignity if they happen not to fit easily into a gender category. That's a different issue.
Right.
But it's a matter of definition. And I actually think it's a foolish argument in some sense. Because what do you mean by real?
You don't think that a trans woman is a woman. And do you think that that is what is behind or explains your opposition to this idea of a law mandating you to use a preferred pronoun, is because you don't actually believe that that's the truth, that a trans woman is a woman, and therefore you can't use that pronoun?
No, that's not my argument at all.
Really?
Yeah, really. My argument is that the government shouldn't compel voluntary speech.
No, but I know what your argument is, and
no,
you've
but
made
that's
it very
really
clearly.
it. No, but that's exactly it. There's
but the
no
motivation
There's
behind
no motivation behind it.
But you don't believe
I wouldn't
trans woman
put
is a woman.
everything on my online in my life to take the stance I did unless I had thought that through very deeply. And I've thought it through very deeply. There aren't hidden motivations that have to do with some arbitrary prejudice against trans people. The devil's in the details with regards to equality, because I'm an advocate of equality of opportunity. But
and
I think
outcomes.
the idea, outcomes, that's an appalling doctrine.
Why? All right, well, hang on.
Because you have to produce an unbelievably potent bureaucracy to make the ever greater and ever finer distinctions that are necessary to enforce equality of outcome. How many group differences are you going to equalize across? Is it just gender and sex? How many genders?
No, so
gender and ethnicity? How many genders?
I think
how many
what
ethnicities?
people are-
How many races?